following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Here's wishing all our viewers a Merry Christmas. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's begin with our top focus, which continues to be on the Israel-Hamas war. Now, as the world celebrates Christmas, war-zone Gaza saw massive bloodshed on Christmas Eve, with at least 70 Palestinians being killed in an Israeli strike at the Al-Maghazi refugee camp, making it one of the deadliest days in the enclave since the Israel-Hamas war began on the 7th of October. According to the Hamas-controlled health ministry, over 20,000 people have now been killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 11 weeks. Spokesperson for the health ministry, Dr. Ashraf Al-Qadr, said, "What is happening at the Marghazi camp is a massacre that's being committed on a crowded residential square." Pope Francis has said the message of Jesus' birth is being rejected by war as he began Christmas celebrations in the Vatican. The Pope said, "Tonight, our hearts are in Bethlehem, where the Prince of Peace is once more rejected by the futile logic of war, by the clash of arms that even today prevents him from finding room in the world." With heavy fighting between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, Christmas celebrations have been effectively cancelled in Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank, revered as the birthplace of Jesus Christ. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has only doubled down on Israel's commitment to the war effort, saying the Israeli military is intensifying its operations inside Gaza and will continue to fight until victory over Hamas is achieved. He said the war had come at a very heavy price for his country, but that there was no choice but to continue fighting. Netanyahu's comments come a day after he spoke to US President Joe Biden and discussed the objectives and phasing of the war. Biden urged Netanyahu to protect civilians but did not call for a ceasefire. 15 Israeli soldiers too were killed in combat over the weekend, bringing the death toll for IDF troops in the Gaza enclave to 154. The IDF says Hamas hides terrorist infrastructure in and around civilian institutions in Gaza, including refugee camps and hospitals, and has repeatedly denied targeting civilians. Despite growing international criticism, even from some of Israel's staunchest allies, over the growing civilian toll in Gaza, Israel has not changed course in its military pursuit of Hamas. This comes as Israeli and Arab media say Egypt, which borders the Gaza Strip, has put forward a new proposal for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Sarah Netanyahu, the wife of Israel's Prime Minister, has sent a letter to Pope Francis requesting his help for the release of the Israeli hostages who are still being held by Hamas. She has also sent letters to the wives of 33 world leaders as part of diplomatic efforts to secure the release of the hostages. Meanwhile, the Israel Defense Forces say they recently discovered another underground Hamas tunnel network, which they demolished following the recovery of the bodies of 5 hostages. The World Health Organization says its officials have witnessed acute hunger and rising desperation in the besieged enclave, with the risk of famine being quite high as people desperately search for food.
Citizens of Israel, we are deepening the war in the Gaza Strip. We will continue to fight until the total victory over Hamas. This is the only way to return our hostages, eliminate Hamas, and ensure that Gaza will no longer be a threat to Israel. It will take time, but we are united. The fighters, the people, and the government. We are united and determined to fight to the end. The war has a price, a very heavy price, in the lives of our heroic warriors. And we are doing everything to safeguard the lives of our warriors. But one thing we will not do. We will not stop until we achieve victory. May it come in Israel and Palestine, where war is devastating the lives of those people. I embrace them all, particularly the Christian communities of Gaza, the parish of Gaza, and the entire Holy Land. My heart grieves for the victims of the abominable attack of October 7 lost, and I reiterate my urgent appeal for the liberation of those still being held hostage. I plead for an end to the military operations with the appalling harvest of innocent civilian victims and call for a solution to the desperate humanitarian situation by an opening to the provision of humanitarian aid. May there be an end to the fueling of violence and hatred, and may the Palestinian question come to be resolved through sincere and persevering dialogue between the parties, sustained by strong political will and the support of the international community. Brothers and sisters, let us pray for peace in Palestine and Israel.
Well, so as the world celebrates Christmas, bloodshed in Gaza continues. Bethlehem, revered as the birthplace of Jesus Christ, is a ghost town today on the occasion of Christmas. To put all these developments into perspective for us, let's now go across to our guests. We are joined by Dr. Hariel Chore, Palestinian affairs expert, joining us live from Tel Aviv in Israel. And our Indian guest on Global Lens tonight is Lieutenant General Rameshwar Yadav, a defense expert. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me. Let me start with Dr. Hariel Chore. Dr. Chore, this has probably been the bloodiest Christmas, not just for Bethlehem, but for Gaza. Of course, according to the Hamas-controlled health ministry, as we've mentioned, more than 20,000 Palestinians have been killed in the Israeli counteroffensive in the last 11 months, and just the occasion of Christmas Eve saw at least 70 Palestinians being killed in a single Israeli strike at the Al-Maghazi refugee camp. And of course, 15 Israeli soldiers were also killed in combat over the weekend. This seems to be getting bloodier by the day. Dr. Chore, really, what does the future hold? Prime Minister Netanyahu seems completely immune to any kind of criticism or the growing calls for a ceasefire. He says there is no question of stopping till we've achieved complete victory over Hamas. But one is beginning to wonder, 20,000 people dead and counting, what would a complete victory over Hamas even look like? Can there be one?
Well, first of all, hello, Nia, and Merry Christmas to all our Christian viewers. I think Netanyahu honestly reflect the consensus in Israel at the moment. Nobody wants to see bloodshed. Nobody wants to see dead Israeli soldiers. As you can see by the death toll on our side, it's costly. And the reason is that nobody wanted, to punish the Palestinians by a death toll. Namely, okay, we will kill 20,000 of you, and then we will feel that we've revenged or something, barbaric of that sense. No, there is a purpose for this war, and the purpose is, of course, to eradicate Hamas once and for all, to put an end for the suffer of both Israelis and Palestinians on both sides of the border. Now, obviously, it has its high prices, but I told you even before, I would really take with a lot of suspicious their numbers. I'll just give you a simple example. We are already something like 2.5 months after the war began. They are counting within those 20,000 the natural causes of death, which is about 2,000 per month. Namely, 5,000 of them, of those 20,000, are dying for natural causes. Of course, there are others who are dying because of the war, including civilians. But still, the ratio between the 8,000 terrorists killed by the IDF and the civilians, namely something like 7,000, if we take, of course, Hamas words, is still better than any other army. Of course, with all the regret that any human being can express on the death of innocents. But we need to conclude this war with the achievements that were, or the goals that were set from the very beginning, which is eradicating this Nazi organization that turned our life into a hell, a living hell in the past 17 years.
Okay. I know that most of you dispute the numbers, the death toll put out by the Hamas-controlled health ministry. But, I also want to mention to you the fact that apart from all these deaths that we're talking about, the World Health Organization is on record as saying there is acute hunger and rising desperation in the Gaza Strip, and there is a huge risk of a famine in the besieged enclave as people are desperately searching for food, those who still are alive. It is an increasingly desperate situation by the minute. So let me go across to our Indian guest at this point, Lieutenant General Rameshwar Yadav. The Israeli Prime Minister says, we are paying a heavy price. The war has come at a very heavy price for Israel, but we have no choice but to keep fighting until we achieve complete victory over Hamas. Frankly, 11 months into the war, 12,000 dead and counting. The world is asking today, who is paying a heavy price? Israel or Palestinians? The innocent civilians. Nobody has any sympathy for the Hamas terrorists. But what about the lives of innocents that are being lost every single day as this war carries on relentlessly? Who really is paying the price here, sir?
It is the civilians who are paying the price. And let us look at the big picture. The military, the political aim of Israel, as enunciated by the Prime Minister, is complete annihilation of Hamas. But to my view, this is not a proper military objective, because Hamas represents an ideology, and there are ideological differentials since centuries. So it cannot go away the way they are trying to use force against the civilians, and the casualties are mounting. In fact, with every person who's been killed in Israeli bombardment and their operations that are going on, there is going to be a sense of revenge amongst the civil population there. So this kind of an episodes are going to recur time and again, even in the future, unless until both the sides they sit down and they reconcile to the fact that Israelis as well as Palestinians, they have to survive and they have to live together. So that could be the way out. And second objective, what Israel has said and had started with, it was that release of all the hostages. Now Hamas has not released all the hostages. They still have the major part of the hostages with them, and they're using them as a human shield, and they're using them as a political bargaining chip. So tomorrow, whenever they're going to sit down on a negotiating table, eventually it is going to come about, sooner or later. And despite the fact whatever Israel may say, we are going to continue this war, but there is a war fatigue. They obviously cannot continue, and especially in the face of the kind of negative publicity they are getting. If you look at the perception management, initially Israel was looked at as a victim. Now there is a paradigm shift. Now Israel is being seen as an aggressor. And entire international community is keen that there should be a ceasefire and they should sit down on a table and negotiate. And the way out probably is state as per the UN Charter given out in 1967.
Well, you certainly make some important points there, including the fact that between the 7th of October and now, Israel has gone from being seen as a victim to being seen as an aggressor and an oppressor of the Palestinian people in Gaza. So just what is the way forward? We will continue with this discussion on the other side of a very short break. Stay with us.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT. News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Welcome back. We're discussing the Israel-Hamas war, which is now in its 11th week as the death toll in Gaza keeps rising. At last count, more than 20,000 people had been killed in Gaza, and according to the Hamas-run health ministry, 60% of them were women and children. This is, of course, a figure that is constantly disputed by Israel. Okay, let me go back to our Israeli guest, Dr. Harel Chore. Dr. Chore, respond to what Lieutenant General Rameshwar Yadav, our Indian guest, said. He makes a couple of important points. One, he believes, and he's a military man, that the military objective that has been set by Israel seems to be unrealistic. We all know that Hamas isn't just a terror organization, it's also an idea or an ideology. How exactly does Israel hope to completely stamp it out and achieve quote-unquote complete victory? Is that even a realistic target? Number two, he says you've gone in the space of 11 weeks from being seen as a victim to an aggressor or an oppressor. And I know you don't like that word, but there are many who are accusing Israel of committing a genocide today. And three, the Lieutenant General makes a very valid point. The kind of angst and outrage that the growing death toll in Gaza is, triggering, not just amongst the Palestinians, but in the entire Arab world. How can Israel hope to have lasting peace and durable security, having triggered so much angst and outrage in that region?
Well, let me start with a common mistake. And a common mistake is that people do not separate between organization and ideology. There is a difference between the two. Of course, the Nazi ideology is still with us, unfortunately, but the Nazi monster of the Second World War was fully destroyed. ISIS is still an idea, still an ideology, but ISIS was destroyed significantly a few years ago. So you can destroy an organization and not necessarily the idea, but this is less, less problematic because first and foremost, you want to destroy the organization, and Hamas can be destroyed. We already, if we are going into percentage, we're already talking about something like 90% of their forces in the north that are destroyed, 50 or even more % of their forces in the south destroyed as well. So eventually they will be destroyed. And regarding the level of hate, Nia, our forces finding there in schools iPads with the picture of Adolf Hitler, okay, and all sorts of Nazi, anti-Semitic from the worst kind against Jews, that was there for years. So they will hate us more than what they hate us at the moment. So what I really hope to see is a catharsis, is something that already happened in the Palestinian arena after the Second Intifada, when they realized that generation, unfortunately, we are also talking about a generational kind of thing, that violence will lead them to nowhere. And my hopes is, following this war, after Hamas will be eradicated as an organization. Of course, we will still need to maintain it. We will still need to go in and out. But surely that this will not be the same kind of organization that we had on October 6th. As for the hunger that you've mentioned before, it's really important to emphasize again and again and again that they are hungry not because they don't get enough trucks every day. They get hundreds of trucks every day from two different crossings. But Hamas is robbing those trucks. You can hear the Gazans complaining openly against Hamas as robbers, as stealers, as people who make the people suffer for what is happening. So it's not even my assumption. As for the international community attitude as Israel, from a victim to an aggressor, yes, but you have on the second day, I heard this despicable professor from Cornell University saying that he was energized and exhilarated because what happened on October 7. All of a sudden, you see who are the anti-Semite here openly. And we need to accept the fact that many people around the world will be negative towards Israel, whatever will happen. Others are just naive and they don't understand what we're facing, what we're dealing with. So at the bottom line, I'm saying, don't love us, but respect us. Don't kill 1,400 people of ours, and you will be safe as you were on October 6th. Nobody, did any provocation to summon this vicious attack. And again, I think I told you this story. I'll do it really shortly, just to express how personal this thing is. 100 meters away from me, a couple who lost their daughter in that party. Neighbors, their son is kidnapped. Friends of ours from America, son is kidnapped. You see, for all of us Israelis, it is extremely personal, and this is why when Benjamin Netanyahu, which is totally out of consensus on a normal day, is right about what he's demanding, that we will fully eradicate Hamas.
Okay, I must clarify here that one is by no stretch of imagination trying to minimize the pain and suffering of the Israelis. Of course, what happened on the 7th of October was absolutely horrifying. It horrified all of us. But the trouble here is that what you're dealing with is a vicious cycle. There are many, including, if I'm not mistaken, the Jordanian Prime Minister, who said that the violence that has happened in Gaza and the deaths that have happened are enough to radicalize an entire generation. So on the one hand, Israel is hoping to finish off Hamas and stamp out terrorism, and yet you may end up radicalizing an entire generation of Palestinians. Let me get Lieutenant General Rameshwar Yadav on that. Sir, your thoughts on this vicious cycle, which unfortunately could go on and on and on, and also talking specifically about the military objectives that Israel had set at the beginning of the war, 11 weeks into the war. To what extent do you believe, sir, that Israel has managed to achieve its military objectives? They talk about uncovering, the Hamas underground network of tunnels. They say we've broken the back of Hamas, at least in northern Gaza. And yet every few days you have a situation where 10 Israeli soldiers are killed in a single day, or 15 Israeli soldiers are killed over a single weekend. How far do you think Israel has really come in this war?
Okay, let me give it a military tactical perspective. You see, what is happening in Gaza now, it is a fighting in built-up area. And fighting in built-up area is one of the most difficult kind of a task. You see, you have to clear each and every house, and after clearing it, you have to occupy it. And each and every house can be converted into a defensive position with the pillboxes, with the fire positions, and anybody coming closer to the house, they'll be fired upon, and they're going to be large number of casualties. So, and especially when you look at Gaza with such a massive built-up area, that to multi-story buildings, it is a very, very difficult task, and it requires a colossal amount of troops. And so therefore, when I analyze what is happening, of course, I do not have all the data that is required to give a correct assessment to what exactly has been the level of achievement of Israel. But what I can say that there is a lot to be achieved as yet. Only in the northern Gaza, they have pulverized the entire area and they have moved forward. There, of course, the population was much lesser, but now in Khan Yunis and all these areas, the thickly built up areas, it is going to take a lot of time to clear these areas. And even if they clear, whichever area they clear it, you will find the Hamas and the civil population going to shift to other areas. So it is a very, very vicious circle and very, very difficult operations. And I don't think Israel has achieved the aim what they should have achieved as per their own calculations so far. It is going to take a lot of time.
All right, this is going to be a long drawn out war. Of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu keeps saying we are ready to fight for as long as it takes. But of course, the question that needs to be asked is how many more Palestinians will need to die before this war comes to an end? For how long will Israel continue to ignore the outrage that has been caused globally and the growing calls for a ceasefire? And let's not forget, even Israel's staunchest ally, the United States of America, has repeatedly said Israel needs to do more to minimize civilian casualties. For how long will the Biden administration continue to stand by Israel in this war against Hamas is perhaps also a question worth asking, given the kind of outrage and anger that the growing death toll in Gaza is causing around the world, including in the United States and among the Democrats belonging to President Biden's party. President Biden faces an election in the US next year. On that note, Dr. Harel Chore and Lieutenant General Ramesh Paryada, thank you so much for joining me on Global Lens. I look forward to having you back on the show. All right, time for us to slip into a quick break here on Global Lens, but we have a lot more for you on the other side. Stay with us.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है Money9। आजादी पैसे की, अभी डाउनलोड करें।
Seeing is believing. Or is it? These are your favorite celebrities that you saw in the videos. But what if I told you that they are not?
Today, deepfake is one of the biggest challenges that the digital ecosystem is facing.
Cannot identify what is deepfake and what is real.
We have seen Rashmika Mandana go through the same thing, and this is becoming a common problem.
Everybody is going to be targeted.
The execution is there's a laxity in our regulatory execution. In times to come, that is going to cost us a lot.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा।
There is certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
नहीं जब हम करेंगे तो पता लग ही जाएगा सलमान खान का करेंगे मारेंगे यहीं जोधपुर में मारेंगे तो पता लग जाएगा
This is someone who is sitting inside our jails and is still very obviously and openly running and possibly the largest organized criminal operation in the country.
Student organization of Punjab University में सोपूगा acting president type भी रहा है.
He was a troublemaker, getting into fights with people, not coming to the class.
As on date, it appears that Lawrence gang is the most important, the prominent gang. Gangs here in Punjab, they are intimidated.
Today, he is India's most dangerous gangster, and India's prisons are apparently no bar to how Bishnoi runs India's largest criminal empire.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Even as the world is soaking in Christmas festivities, there are no Christmas celebrations in Bethlehem, revered as the birthplace of Jesus Christ. Bethlehem is normally at its busiest at Christmas, but this year, the Israel-Hamas war has scared away tourists and pilgrims from the Palestinian town in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, leaving hotels, restaurants and souvenir shops deserted. It looks practically like a ghost town. With global headlines dominated since 7th October by the news of the Hamas attacks in southern Israel, followed by Israel's military assault on Gaza and a rise in violence in the West Bank, business owners in Bethlehem say no one is coming this time. One of them was quoted as saying, "This is the worst Christmas ever. Bethlehem is shut down for Christmas. No Christmas tree, no joy, no Christmas spirit." Pope Francis said the message of Jesus' birth is being rejected by war. He said, "Tonight our hearts are in Bethlehem, where the Prince of Peace is once more rejected by the futile logic of war, by the clash of arms that even today prevents him from finding room in the world."
So this year, as you can see, Bethlehem, it's very empty. It's not normal for us. In Bethlehem, it's been like, for me, I'm 38 years old. I've never saw Bethlehem that sad because, you know, the war in Gaza affected us. And it's not, we can't say Gaza is not part of us. Gaza is part of Palestine and Palestine is part of Gaza. So you can feel no atmosphere, people not feeling Christmas, and Bethlehem is very, very sad. And as you know also as well, all the checkpoints and all the entrances for Bethlehem are all closed. So people are not allowed, even the one who lives in Jerusalem or all over, they are not allowed to come to Bethlehem. So the Christians, as you can see, of the Holy Land, they are not allowed to celebrate Christmas in Bethlehem.
The whole world is celebrating Christmas this year, but not Bethlehem, not the birthplace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Bethlehem is celebrating Christmas with sadness and sorrow because of what's happening in Gaza and in all the West Bank, all Palestinian territories. Like other years, we used to celebrate Christmas with joy and happiness, with scouts and people coming from all Palestinian governorates and with tourists from all over the world. Unfortunately, this year, we're receiving Christmas without tourists from the world and without Palestinians from other governorates because of the war on Gaza. We cannot talk about tourists now because we don't have any tourists now, but from the beginning of the year until the end of September, we had more than 2.3 million tourists that arrived to Palestine. But since the war until now, we have no tourists in Palestine, and especially here in Bethlehem.
It is a very sad Christmas. As we saw, there is no atmosphere of feast because we are in a war, terrible war, and our thought goes first and foremost to Gaza, to our people of Gaza, to all the people of Gaza, but special attention to our also Christian community of Gaza who is suffering. But I know that we are not the only ones suffering. 2 million are suffering without house, without hungry. They are hungry. unbearable situation, and we are here to pray, but also tonight to ask not just for the ceasefire. Ceasefire is not enough. We have to stop these hostilities and to turn the page, because violence generates only violence. And the message of Christmas is not violence, it's peace.
All right, let's turn our attention now to India-Russia ties as India's External Affairs Minister makes a visit to Moscow. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is on a 4-day visit to Russia as part of the ongoing high-level exchanges between the two countries. Dr. Jaishankar is scheduled to meet with Deputy Russian Prime Minister and Industry and Trade Minister Denis Manturov and his counterpart, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The leaders will engage in wide-ranging discussions on bilateral, multilateral and various international issues. With a focus on people-to-people and cultural ties between the two countries, the Foreign Minister will have engagements in Moscow and St. Petersburg. The Ministry of External Affairs, in a press release, has said the time-tested India-Russia partnership has remained stable and resilient and continues to be characterized by the spirit of the special and privileged strategic partnership. All right, from Russia, let's now turn our attention to the United Kingdom, where yet another minister is courting controversy. The British Home Secretary is in the line of fire and facing calls to resign after making tasteless jokes about spiking his wife's drink with a date rape drug at a Downing Street reception. James Cleverly apologized for making the controversial remarks just hours after the Home Office announced plans to crack down on spiking, that's putting drugs into another person's drink or directly into their body without their knowledge. But campaigners said his comments were likely to be upsetting and triggering to victims of spiking and sexual assault, and called for an overhaul of attitudes that normalized banter and jokes about date rape and coercive control. Cleverly told guests at a Downing Street reception that a little bit of rohypnol in her drink every night, that is his wife's drink every night, was not really illegal, if it's only a little bit. He also laughed that the secret to a long marriage was making sure your spouse was someone who's always mildly sedated so she can never realize there are better men out there. A spokesperson for the Home Secretary said in what was always understood as a private conversation, James, the Home Secretary, tackling spiking, made what was clearly meant to be an ironic joke for which he apologizes. But Cleverly's remarks have detracted from the government's messaging on spiking and sparked calls for the Home Secretary to resign. Jemima Olchovsky, the chief executive of leading women's rights charity, the Fawcett Society, said the comments were sickening. She said, "We know that banter is the excuse under which misogyny is allowed to thrive. How can we trust James Cleverly to seriously address violence against women and girls? We deserve better than this from our lawmakers, and he should resign." Alex Davies-Jones, the shadow minister for domestic violence and safeguarding, said, "It was a joke is the most tired excuse in the book, and no one is buying it. If the Home Secretary is serious about tackling spiking and violence against women and girls, then that requires a full cultural change. The banter needs to stop, and it has to start at the top." The British police receive an average of over 550 reports of spiking a month, with the majority being made by women, typically after incidents in or near bars and nightclubs, according to a Home Office report. Between May 2022 and April 2023, there were over 6,700 reports of spiking in England and Wales, including nearly 1,000 reported incidents of needle spiking. All right, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Global Lens, and as we do so, we're leaving you with images of Christmas celebrations from around the globe. And on that note, here's wishing all our viewers a Merry Christmas.
It was the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there.
The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mom in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash.
The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer.
With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name.
Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before that wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof.
As I drew in my head, I was turning around. Down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he'd flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening a pack.
His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up in a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk.
And laying his finger on the side of his nose and giving a nod up the chimney he rose.
He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine brought tragedy and suffering, forever changing lives. It's also changed Christmas in the country, and at least one Ukrainian couple says the change is for the better. Lesia Shestakova was baking pastries for the festival earlier this week. She's a Catholic who has traditionally celebrated Christmas on December 25th. But her husband, Alexander, is an Orthodox Christian who has marked the festival on January 7th. This year, in an effort to distance the country from Russia and its Orthodox tradition, Ukraine passed a law making December 25th the official Christmas holiday. That means, for the first time, Lesia and Alexander will share a single Christmas together.
Нарешті в Україні з'явився день.
Lesia Shestakova told Reuters, quote, "There is finally a day in Ukraine which my husband and I can spend together in the cathedral and thank God that we are together, alive and in good health. Our families will celebrate together too." On Sunday, they jointly attended the Catholic Cathedral of St. Alexander in Kyiv. Since Moscow's February 2022 attack, many Ukrainians have rejected the Russian language and culture, among other historical ties to Kyiv's former ruler. Ukrainian authorities have also stepped up a campaign to rename streets and settlements, as well as remove statues and monuments tied to the Tsarist and Soviet past.
Росія, вона сама нищить свою спадщину в Україні.
Alexander told Reuters, quote, "Russia, by its own actions, is destroying its heritage in Ukraine. Our young country is being reborn by going through this agony caused by Russia. And now, on December 25th, the country's rebirth will start with new holidays."
seeing is believing. Or is it? You know it's true when you hear it yourself. Am I right? Or wrong? These are your favorite celebrities that you saw in the videos. But what if I told you that they are not? Welcome to the world of deepfakes. These celebrities were caught in the web of deepfakes. So what if I told you that you could be next? AI has entered our lives and it's here to stay. But what's more scary is how artificial intelligence is being misused to impersonate or create videos with people who have nothing to do with it. The biggest casualties are the celebrities with star power. People like Kajol, Alia Bhatt, Katrina Kaif, Rashmika Mandanna. So basically the queen bees of Bollywood have been targeted. So what makes you think that you are safe?
Today, deepfake is one of the biggest challenges that the digital ecosystem is facing, and particularly in the Indian context. Now, some major celebrities and actresses have been targeted, including Alia Bhatt, including Katrina Kaif, Rashmika Mandanna. But they are not going to be alone. Everybody is going to be targeted.